Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Ireland once again and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. Now, this is a brewery that I've heard very good things about. They're supposed to be doing some very nice beers, so it's nice to finally get around to featuring these guys here on the channel, and it's nice to be reviewing some Irish beers for you again, both from the Republic and from the North, of course. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that you don't come across all that often anymore, so I'm pretty curious to see how it turns out actually. So hopefully this is another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review we are going to go to Northern Ireland. We're going to go to County Down, to a little town called Kilkeel to be specific, which is almost right in the kind of southeastern corner of Northern Ireland actually, and that means that we're going to have a look at my very first beer from Hut Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called the Galaxy Mosaic Cornet. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Double Milkshake IPA. So yeah, really curious to see what it has in store for us. It's not that often that you get beers that are specifically termed milkshake IPAs anymore. So yeah, nice to get this one on the channel and have a look at it. So a big shout out once again to Paul Rogers, who runs Dalriada Imports. As I've told you in my other recent Irish reviews, he imports Irish beer over here to Scotland, and this is one of the numerous beers that he gave me to review here on the channel. So yeah, massive shout out to him, and it's really cool to see him kind of getting the Irish beers over here and spreading the word about them. Two other shout outs to Thomas Window Beer and also to Brandon Sewell, who is Views on Brews, two Irish beer tubers who are doing a lot to promote Irish craft beer over there. I'll try to remember to put the links to their channels in the video description for you below, so do make sure you go and give those guys a like and subscribe as well. It's certainly cool just to see Irish beer getting out there a little bit more, because for a long time it was pretty much like gold dust and there was just nothing that you could get from there outside of the island. So yeah, long may that continue. But yeah, let's crack on with this review then and see how we go. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Hut Brewing Company. I think I've got another 2 beers to have a look at from these guys, and you'll see those appear fairly shortly. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for the Irish beers that I'm reviewing for you. That includes those both from the North and from the Republic. And as always, do please get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you guys are showing the channel is massively appreciated. So anyway, let's have a little look at my brewery notes for Hut Brewing then. So Hut Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Kilkeel in County Down, which is in the very southeastern corner of Northern Ireland. So the brewery was founded back in January of 2017 by Andy McBride and his brother-in-law Neil Chambers. But both of these guys come from a background as tradesmen. I believe that one of them was a plumber and the other one was a joiner. But they say that this has helped them over the years getting the brewery kind of built up and things like that, and obviously those would be very handy skills to have. But Andy says he remembers trying the really bitter and also the big malty beers, and this really got him thinking about what beer could actually taste like, and this led him to actually start brewing beer for himself, researching the ingredients and just learning along the way. He says that he learned on the job when it came to brewing beer. But Andy is actually the head brewer and he's largely self-taught. He actually had plans to do the International Brewing Diploma, IBD qualification, but he said that he couldn't find time between his construction career, his tradesman career, and having a young family, and also trying to get the brewery off the ground. So yeah, self-taught brewer, but that is the case with many craft breweries. Neil involves himself mostly with the business side of the brewery, but he does various other things around the company as well. But the business itself started off with a very small 50-litre brew kit in a hut that was at the side of Andy's house, hence the name Hut, and their first commercial beers were actually brewed on this very small kit. Later on though, they upgraded to a 300-litre kit, and these days they're running a much larger 10 hectolitre brew kit, which is basically 1,000 litres. But they've invested quite heavily in the brewery infrastructure over the last few years. They got some new tanks last year in 2020 from what I understand, and they've been beginning to export their beers into a few countries in Europe. I think it was Spain I think it was Spain, Denmark and somewhere else that they said they were exporting their beers to. So they are starting to get out there a little bit more. But they also run a tap room at the brewery once a month, which apparently was quite a hurdle to get off the ground because of the Northern Irish licensing laws. They are pretty strict and even stricter than the ones here in Scotland. But as of November 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 75 different kinds of beer, and that no doubt will increase over the coming months and years, if you like. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Beer Hut Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, as I say, that is all I can really tell you about them for the moment. But a big shout out to Andy, who took the time to reply to my email and give me quite a bit of that information that I found for you, that I gave you there in the brewery history section. But yeah, I did a little bit of investigating and found a few newspaper articles and things like that as well. So yeah, always good to get a couple of different things when we're doing the history section. But yeah, let's have a little look at the beer itself then. So as I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one comes in at 8% ABV. They only say double IPA on the side here, but it says it's listed on Untappd as being a double milkshake IPA. So we'll see how it goes when we actually have a taste of it, but there seems to be a few different beers in this kind of Cornet series, if you like. So even having the name Cornet, like kind of cornetto, ice cream sort of thing, you know, it does kind of infer that there will be a little bit of a kind of more creamy, lactosey type thing to it. You can see the camera isn't a great fan of this one just because of the silver thing there, but there you can see Beer Hut Brewing Company, Galaxy, Mosaic Cornet, and then if I bring this round to the back here, I'm just going to check that this is focusing for you. You can see, don't know if that's going to work actually, the Beer Hut Brewing Company symbol there. But yeah, this is a 440ml can, a plain silver top on it of course. But yeah, I've really no idea what this beer would actually cost you over in Northern Ireland, in fact. And that's one of the things, because Paul gave me all of these beers to review for you. So I maybe need to ask him what these beers sell for over in Ireland, actually, so I can give you a proper price. But yeah, 8%, I guess, yeah, 8% milkshake, imperial milkshake, double milkshake IPA, I guess we can say. But Galaxy and Mosaic are hops that we do know fairly well. Galaxy from Australia, about 14% alpha acid, usually gives you quite a pungent passion fruit, but also kind of juicy mangoey and pineapple type quality. Mosaic is an American hop, again about 14% alpha acid, and it usually gives you a lovely big kind of juicy tangerine sort of thing. But yeah, nicely presented beer, this one. I think we should get this guy out and have a little look at it and see how we go. So let's pop the can and get this guy out and into the glass. There we are. So just very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. I just rinsed this glass as well, and it's, well, washed it, and all the carbonation is sticking to the side of the glass. That's annoying. Only left it for about 10 minutes after rinsing it as well, but it just kind of goes to show you. There we are. But that's most of the beer into the glass. Let me just put this down, line it up, and I think, yeah, that should be quite nice for the rest of the video. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, I'll just bring it up to the camera to let you see. You can see there are some bubbles just sticking towards the side of the glass, despite the fact that it is pretty clean. But before the head disappears, you can see that the beer has poured with a finger or so of quite a bumpy, I would say, kind of creamy coloured head. That's definitely not a perfect white head, more of a sort of creamy colour rather than anything else. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass now. There were quite a few earlier, but you can see a sort of steady stream of medium-sized bubbles kind of going up towards the bottom of it there. But overall, it looks pretty much as you would expect from a sort of hazy milkshake type IPA. So yeah, in terms of colour, I think we would describe this one as being a lovely kind of bright yellow. If I put my hand behind the glass there, you can see it is a lovely kind of bright but still quite rich yellow colour in fairness. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on, one, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour of your beer, the EBC rating in other words. The length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Usually a sort of hazy IPA or a milkshake IPA like this will undergo a wort boil of about 90 minutes, but you also can affect the colour of these beers with any barrel aging that you do and any adjuncts that you put in. In this case, we don't need to care about barrel aging, of course, but lactose I don't think is going to affect the colour of the beer too much, because I think normally when you have lactose in its pure form, if I'm remembering my chemistry days right, it is just a kind of colourless liquid actually, if I remember rightly, but they'll probably get in like a white powder or something like this, I would think. But yeah, certainly looks the part. Nothing untoward about that. The level of haze in this beer, I would say for an 8%er, it's certainly not one of the soupier and gloopier ones that I've come across, but it does just have a nice level of haziness to it. So I think that works out pretty nicely. In fact, let me just check and see what it says is in the malt base with this one. Does it say that it's barley? It's just barley and oats and yeast. So yeah, there's no wheat in this. So I expect this one will be quite a smooth sort of creamy beer when it's got the lactose in it as well. The other thing I remember reading about this one on the Untappd page was that it was hopped to 22 grams per litre as well. So that's also worth noting, and that's fairly high actually, although you can go higher than that of course. But yeah, appearance wise, nothing untoward about this beer. Decent level of haze to it. Most of that will of course be coming from the oats and the yeast in this case. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Quite curious to see what it has in store for us. Yeah, to be honest with you, from the first aroma, or the first whiff of the aroma, I don't think I would guess that that was a lactose IPA. I don't find the lactose overly obvious in this one actually. It does have a good bit of sweetness to it, but I've smelt other sort of New England hazy IPAs that are very, very similar to that. So yeah, it comes across, the first impression of it is that it's quite a bright, grassy and floral New England IPA. So as I've stated in other kind of New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA videos, I think there's a few different directions that you can take these beers in. They can be sort of farmhousey and yeasty, they can be rye leaning and grainy, wheaty and bitey, oaty creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they can be more sweet and brown sugary. But of course the milkshake IPAs tend to be a little bit more kind of just sweet and creamy, if that makes sense. Usually sometimes they can give you a little bit of a vanilla character actually, but this one doesn't smell too much different from a kind of regular New England double IPA. It actually smells quite bright and zesty in a lot of ways, so that's pretty interesting. That's my first impression of it. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? Let's break down the aroma a little bit more kind of in depth for you then. So malty backbone. Yeah, I mean, you get a little bit of a kind of bread crusty note out of this one. There's a little bit of that, but I would say that takes a back seat. Maybe one or two little Jacob's cream crackery type notes, but again, that's very minimal. I do get quite a bit of a white bready character out of this one though. I would definitely say that a lovely kind of white bready character is showing its head in this beer, so I like that for sure. Yeah, a lovely big kind of smooth white bready character to this one. You can smell a little bit of the oatiness in there. You can smell the sort of smoothness but slight dryness of the oats, and they almost give you a little bit of sweetness. And the more and more that you smell that, you can smell that sort of vanilla-y, lactosey milkshake kind of thing coming out of this beer. But like I say, this is not the most obviously sweet milkshake IPA that I've come across from the aroma perspective. It really doesn't smell all that different from a number of the ones that I've had. I'm not sure exactly when this beer was canned or whatever, because remember, when you have these IPAs that have oats in them, what tends to happen after about 6 weeks or something like that, you'll start to get the oats, they almost just like cream up and porridge up a little bit, and you can smell a little bit of that going on in this beer. You can smell that the oats aren't quite as smooth and sweet as they might once have been, so you can smell that in this beer, that it's not at its absolute freshest. But regardless, it does come across pretty nicely. So on the other than that, the malt base, I do get a little tiny hint of like a Werther's Original, butter candy, butterscotchy thing out of this, but again, that's quite minimal for me. It's a lot of breadiness, a lot of oatiness, a bit of that milkshakey sweetness, and yet it does almost at the back of the nose give the impression of having a little bit of wheat in it, but we know that isn't in there. Other than that, I can't think of too much to say about the the malty and yeasty side of the beer, to be honest with you. I think that covers everything. So let's look at the hoppy components then. So the green component first off. For me, there is a wee bit of earthiness to it, not a lot. And remember, the earthiness, I would say, is most likely to come from the Mosaic. I've always found that Mosaic has a wee bit of an earthy characteristic to it, so you can certainly smell that in this beer. A lovely little bit of earthiness. But otherwise, I would say the green component really leans towards a big floral aromaticity, and it does have a little bit of zip to it from that perspective. It's got a lovely big floral aromatic zip to it, which I think goes together really, really well. But on top of that, you've got a really nice kind of, you do get a lovely little bit of a kind of grassy, zesty quality to it. So I really like how that, I really like how all of that goes together as well. This beer does have a little bit of a zippy bite to it, which again is something I find a little bit surprising for, you know, a sort of milkshake type IPA. So I do wonder if that Untappd, categorization isn't quite right. So I'd be interested to hear the brewery's thoughts on that from the horse's mouth, if you like. So yeah, it does have a fair little bit of grassy zestiness to it and quite a bit of floral aromatic spice. Now, the thing you have to remember with these hazy IPAs as well is that they often rely on late addition and dry hopping, and those give you very little bitterness. Dry hopping doesn't give you any, late addition hopping can give you a little bit. It's the early addition hops that can really give you a big bit of that kind of, it's early addition hops that will give you the big kind of bitterness of the beer, if you like, and those are used quite often in West Coast IPAs. So yeah, on the fruity side of things though, there's a lot, it's pretty much what you'd expect. If you know these hops, Galaxy and Mosaic, I've not seen a beer that has that combination in it for a wee while, but it is quite a well-known combination, and it's given me what I would expect from that. So there is quite a pungent passion fruit to this one. I do get quite a lot of that. There's certainly a wee bit of juicy mango in there, and quite a bit of pineapple actually. And then you've got that big, juicy, slightly more oily tangerine note out of this one, which will be coming from the Mosaic. So for me, aroma-wise, the Galaxy dominates a little bit, but you do still get all of those other things going on with it as well. So this is quite an interesting beer from that perspective for sure. Yeah, this is really quite nice actually. So I like how I do like how that goes together. Yeah, aroma wise, this is pretty damn good actually. So I'm curious to just taste it and see how we go. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them. But I think it is about time that we had a little taste of this beer. So this one is the Galaxy Mosaic Cornet, a double IPA, 8% ABV from Hut Brewing Company in Kilkeel, County Down, Northern Ireland. Let's get stuck into this one and see how we go. And again, a big thank you to Paul for making this review possible. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Yeah, I'm just going to say, you can kind of see why this brewery's getting a bit of hype. You can see why there's a bit of hype around this brewery for sure on that first taste. I'm going to say this beer isn't at its freshest. You can get that from it kind of straight away, but it is pretty damn solid even for this. I don't know exactly when it's been canned. It doesn't have a canning date on it, but yeah, it is in pretty damn good nick actually. So just say thumbs up to Hut Brewing. I think I've got I don't know if it's a regular IPA or a pale ale, but I've also got a sour to try from them as well, which is going to be interesting. So yeah, I think after these ones we'll need to try something from the dark end of the spectrum. But if this is the New England IPAs they're putting out there, this is, or the hazy IPAs I should say, this is pretty good. Be curious to see what they do with a West Coaster and a black IPA as well. But yeah, this certainly has my approval already. Yeah, it just kind of hits the spot. Didn't realise I was in the mood for something like this until I tasted it, but it does just hit the spot for sure. So first impression of this one is that it's quite a smooth, and it is definitely quite a creamy leaning hazy IPA, this one for sure. but it does have a wee bit of that. It has a good kind of zippy, citrusy leaning side to it as well. It's definitely got that zippy green component and a good little bit of a citrusy zest to it. So that's quite interesting for sure. So let's just break this beer down as we always do and describe it a wee bit more in depth. It's quite a straight shooting beer, this. I don't find it overly complex, but it does what it wants to do pretty effectively. So straight away, across the middle third of your palate then, you can feel that nice bread crusty quality there. You do get a little bit of that across the middle of your palate, but straight on top of that though, you can feel that smooth white bready character coming out of the beer. So on top of that, you can get a really nice, how do we say, you do get a really nice kind of just smoothness out of it. We'll focus on the middle third of your palate for the moment. So you've got that little bit of bread crust, which as I say is quite minimal. You do get a little element of that Jacob's cream cracker thing that I was talking about too, but on top of that you can feel the white bready layer, but very quickly on top of that you can feel the smoothness of the oats and the lactose just kind of giving you that smooth creamy sort of thing. It actually feels in the middle of your palate as if that kind of layer of flavour is quite compressed. This is certainly not the thickest of beers. It's actually quite slick and quite, you know, compressed in terms of the sort of flavour, but it works. It really does work actually. So this one certainly is hitting the spot in that sense. The further you go into the aftertaste with it, you do start to get that slightly lactosey vanilla flavour out of it, but it's not too sweet. I repeat that, it's not too sweet. It just comes across as quite smooth. Maybe in the dead centre of your palate you've got a little tiny circle like that where you're getting a wee bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing out of it. But really, it is certainly not the sweetest of New England doubles or milkshakey doubles that you're going to come across. I'm not sure exactly where to categorise this beer, but it actually reminds me of some of the ones I've had from Ale Farm in Denmark over the last wee while. It's quite similar actually to the sort of stuff that I've had from them over the years. So yeah, need to see what the other, I'm pretty sure it's a single IPA that I've got from these guys actually, so we need to see what that one's like. But yeah, this is pretty solid actually, so again, thumbs up to Beer Hut for this one. But I think, to be honest, that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate. So let's look at the back third of the palate then. The border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up out of this one. So you can feel that there is a bit of that sort of bread crusty sort of thing, and as you move into the back third of your palate you can feel that the bread crusty notes get a wee bit more grainy. There's a bit of that white bready character again, and again it feels just a little bit more grainy. Then on top of that you can feel there's definitely a bit more of a yeasty note to it, and actually it's interesting because out of the yeasty note in this you do get a little bit of an almost farmhousey character to it. So I wonder if it's like a London fog or a verdant yeast or something like that they're using in here, because you can feel that sort of doughy, woody, crackery, farmhousey kind of thing just on the back third of the palate there, and that is quite interesting. But when you start on the back of that, the back third of the palate there, you can feel it's got, the flavour is a bit taller there, but this certainly isn't the kind of, the malty side of this beer isn't the biggest and most dense in terms of what I've come across before with the New England hazy type IPAs, but it does the job really effectively in that sense. So when you start at the back of your palate you can feel the flavour, the height of the flavour is kind of like this, and then it just condenses down as you come further forward and sort of squashes together. So I like that about this one for sure. And other than that, I don't think there's too much else to say about the malty side of this beer. The only other thing I could really add is to say that if I was tasting this blind, I would think there's a bit of wheat in this, because it does have a wee bit of that bitiness towards the back of the palate. So yeah, that's another interesting point about this beer for sure. But let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate, there is definitely a wee bit of earthiness there, and again I would think that that's coming from Mosaic. But as you move further forward, the earthiness does spread a little bit, but then you start to get a nice big deep, slightly dank floral aromaticity to it. I don't know if I would go as far as saying pine resins, but to me it just comes across as a really deep floral aromaticity, and again, I like how this goes together. It gets a thumbs up from me. So on the grassy side of things, around the front curve of the palate, you do get quite a little bit of a grassy, zesty character coming out of this one, and I would say that I think that's most likely to come from Galaxy. You know, I think I've never noticed that big zesty character from Galaxy before, because it's almost a little bit like, you know, Centennial or even kind of what you get from Citra. So that's quite interesting. As I say, just around the edge of the palate, it is really quite grassy and zesty. So yeah, need to keep an eye on that with when it comes to Galaxy in other reviews. But let's focus on that front third of the palate then, and the fruitier part of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready, bread crusty build up there, but the base of that front third of your palate is definitely more kind of smooth, and it is definitely more kind of smooth and white bready. There's a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream crackery sort of element to it as well. But on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And again, when it comes to the hoppy, the fruity side of the beer, there's nothing really unexpected about this, because I know these two hops fairly well. So towards the back of that front third of your palate, you do get quite a strong pungent passion fruit. As you move further forward, it gives you a little bit of a mango-y note there, but you start to get some softer notes out of it, like a little bit of a pineapple-y note. There's maybe a wee hint of apricot under there as well as you reach the very middle of that front third of your palate, and on top of it a bit of a pineapple-y note. But in the front half of that front third of your palate, you do get that nice kind of oily, you do get a nice little bit of that kind of oily tangerine orange sort of thing. So that works. That does work really quite well actually from the Mosaic, and the sort of pineapple-y notes from the Galaxy do kind of spread over that a little bit, which is interesting. So yeah, the way that this goes together, I think works really, really well. But yeah, on top of that, I think it does the job. It does the job quite nicely. So yeah, other than that, at the very front kind of tip of the tongue, you do get this sort of really lemony, zesty kind of element to the beer. And you know, that just kind of mixes in with the kind of grassy elements on the tip of the tongue. So overall, it's a really kind of zippy, zesty leaning beer, this one actually. Fruity side of it is, I think the Galaxy dominates, so I don't know what the mix of this beer is in terms of hops. But yeah, I think the Galaxy kind of dominates this one a little bit, to be honest with you. But I think we can round off the flavour there. This is really a big zippy, kind of citrusy, zesty leaning beer, this one. But I like it. I do like it. So let's have a little look at the mouthfeel of this beer then. So, mouthfeel wise, I'd say this one's kind of straight up mid-bodied. The carbonation is quite, it does actually have a degree of crispness to it, this one, which is kind of interesting. It's certainly not the thickest and creamiest of New England IPAs that I've come across, but it's it has just got that degree of kind of crispness and wetness to it, which is interesting for sure. So good quality Irish water, absolutely. So you can feel that straight away in this one. In terms of IBUs, what would we say? I don't find this one overly bitter. I mean, I would think this is somewhere in the kind of 40, maybe 50 IBU mark. But the thing is, it's got such a big sort of zesty zippiness to it. It's actually a little bit difficult to distinguish between that and the IBU overall. So I could be completely wrong with this, and this is like 20 or 25 IBUs. So take the IBU rating on this one with a pinch of salt. And as I always say, this is my weakest point of beer reviewing. But the malty side of this one, for me, is quite smooth. It's not as creamy as I was expecting it to be when it's got the lactose in it. But you get a slight degree of sweetness out of it. But yeah, pretty smooth malt base, this one. The fruits for me are quite zesty and quite zippy, but they do get a little bit more oily the further into the aftertaste you go. But the green component of this one adds to that sort of zippiness and zestiness that the beer has overall. But yeah, I think this has been a really interesting beer. to review, and a nice first impression of Hut Brewing Company for sure. So I'll need to have a look at the sour and the other beer that I have from them at some point soon and see how we get on with those. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So there you are, my first beer from Hut Brewing Company. So yeah, this one was the Galaxy Mosaic Cornet, an 8% New England Hazy milkshake IPA, double IPA of some description. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it turned out to be a very nice beer, and that, of course, is the most important question when it comes to beer. Is it a good one? Yes. And would it make you want to try that? Would you want to drink it again or drink another one from the brewery? The answer there is a yes as well. So yeah, let's round it off. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hut Brewing. And like I said, we will return to these guys at some point fairly soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys on the next one.